We have a lot of news and some NHL trade rumors to take a look at today. We have trade talk around the Los Angeles Kings, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Ottawa Senators. We also have a coach extension in New Jersey, our first suspension of the year in Vegas, several injury updates, and some other news as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of news and some trade talk to take a look at here today. Of course, it's day 2 of the NHL regular season for 23-24. We had a fun opening night with 3 games last night. We get to see the Connor Bedard debut against Sidney Crosby. Vegas unveiled their Stanley Cup banner, and all in all, it was a good night of hockey, and I hope we get that tonight. Of course, the scheduled doubles from 3 games to 6 with all 7 Canadian teams in action. And today's news, we got first up, a St. Louis Blues have a player on waivers. That's Andre Heim. It's unconditional waivers for the purpose of a contract termination. So obviously the player and the team have agreed to mutually terminate the contract, and he obviously has found an opportunity elsewhere that he finds more appealing. So he'll no longer be in the St. Louis Blues organization. All players from yesterday that were on waivers were cleared. So Bobby McMahon of Toronto, David Riddick of the Kings, and Alex Barré-Boulet of the Lightning. The New Jersey Devils today announced they've extended head coach Lindy Ruff on a multi-year contract extension. Obviously, we had heard before that was kind of in the works. There was obviously interest considering the amount of success the Devils have had under him in the past couple of seasons. We saw major growth last year. I know Jack Hughes is an absolutely huge Lindy Ruff fan, so no surprise they're keeping him around. So clearly, that's a good move. I'm not sure exactly how many years. It was just reported as multi-year. Obviously, he's under contract for the current year already, so I would say probably 2 or 3 years beyond that. So I'd expect Lindy Ruff to be with the Devils for at least 2-3 more seasons. We also saw some coaching amendments in Columbus as well. They've added somebody to Pascal Vincent's staff. Joseph Boumidia has been added as an assistant coach, and they've extended assistant coaches Jared Boll and Steve McCarthy for an extra year on their contract. We have our first suspension of the year. Vegas Golden Knights forward Brett Howden has been suspended for 2 games. Well, actually, we had a suspension in the preseason, but our first one of the regular season. Last night in the game with Vegas doing battle against the Seattle Kraken, Brett Howden was called for an illegal check to the head against the Kraken's Brandon Tanev. He was given a major penalty, and he will be suspended now for 2 games. From what I've seen in the play, it looks like it was the right call, and certainly well-deserving. So as I mentioned, we also had Kaliev in LA was suspended during the preseason. He still has 2 regular season games he needs to serve that on. He has been recalled, is on LA's roster to start the year, so he can serve those first 2 games as well. So we also have several injury updates. Sharks captain Logan Couture is going to miss the start of the year. That shouldn't be a huge surprise if you've been following the Sharks. Couture has been out, hasn't really participated with his teammates in preseason action. He's still considered out indefinitely. They're kind of considering it week to week. Hard to say exactly what kind of timeline here that we're looking at. But unfortunately, the captain will not be in the lineup for at least for the foreseeable future, a little while anyways. The Los Angeles Kings are also going to be without Victor Arvidsson for the start of the season. Similar boat. He's going to be out. Shouldn't be too long, but Eric's saying it's going to be more than a game. It's looking at multiple games before he'll be ready. Another top sniper as well for the Hurricanes, Andrei Svechnikov, who unfortunately missed a big chunk of the ending of last year. Still not quite ready to return from a major surgery. He will be missing the start of the year. Not quite clear exactly how long he'll be out. Rod Brindamore said he was close, but close can mean a variety of things. We've seen that with Josh Norris in Ottawa since training camp started. They've been saying he's close, so hard to say, but he's going to miss tonight's game against Ottawa for sure. After that, it's kind of hard to say, be evaluated on a day-by-day basis. Same with Josh Norris in Ottawa. Ottawa has said that for right now, he's not going on long-term injury reserve. He's considered day-to-day. He will not expected to play tonight against the Hurricanes, but should be hopefully, because after this they go home for a bit of a homestay and they have their home opener on the weekend, that they're hoping he'll be able to play and by next week. So hopefully that's good news, because obviously they need to get him back in the lineup as soon as possible. We also seen the launch of a new initiative today with several leagues participating that I thought was fantastic. The CHL, which is the Canadian Hockey League, which is all the junior leagues, the American Hockey League, the East Coast Hockey League, the USHL, which is a junior level league in the U.S., and the PWHL, a newly formed women's professional league, have joined together to create what they call the Respect Hockey Culture Center. So this is an initiative that will provide mental health support for players and a place where they'll be able to report confidentially any type of abuse or misconduct. So to me, that's absolutely fantastic. That it's nice to see that there's going to be a support system in place for hockey players. Mental health is a very serious issue, something that a lot of people can struggle with. And yes, there's the NHL Players Assistance Program, but that's the NHL. A lot of these other leagues don't all have the same level of benefits and things they can tap into. So it's nice to see all these leagues get together to form this Respect Hockey Culture group. So hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about this initiative, but a great announcement and happy to hear that. We also had a signing today as well. Actually, Columbus, not only did they announce their changes to their coaching staff, but they've also extended Justin Danforth. He gets a 1-year contract extension, $1.1 million. Now, there's some rumors in the NHL we want to discuss. According to Elliotte Friedman, before the Maple Leafs traded Sam Lafferty to the Canucks, which they only got a 5th-round draft pick, they were having discussions, and they were talking to the Edmonton Oilers to also trade him there instead. I did hear the speculation that the Oilers were in the mix when Lafferty was being dealt, but apparently the Leafs were looking to get back big young defenseman Vincent Desharnais. And the Oilers did not want to part with Desharnais for Lafferty, so the trade never happened. So ultimately, the Leafs did try to ship him there. They did make an offer. Edmonton rejected. He ended up going to Vancouver. So you really, Brad Treliving trying to get himself a defenseman. Not a surprise, as I've talked about numerous times before. Treliving loves to build from the back end out. Every trade he makes, he seems to bring back a defenseman of some sort, whether it be prospect or veteran or anything in between, to the organization. So at the end of the day here, we'll see what happens in the future with the trades he makes with the Leafs, but certainly an interesting tidbit of information there on one of his early deals that Treliving has made as GM of Toronto. Now, a variety of other rumors I want to take a look at as well. We might as well stick with the Leafs since we're talking about Lafferty. I know Dave Poulin of TSN, an analyst, very respected, former player, former NHL executive, and current TV analyst for TSN, talking about how the William Nylander contract extension negotiations are extremely complicated, which is why they're taking so long and why we're nowhere near a deal at this point. Hard to say if it's going to lead to a trade, but I know a lot of people have a variety of opinions. I've seen some Leaf media say, listen, if we get to the trade deadline and Nylander's not signed, he needs to be traded. I've seen others say, well, it really boils down to how the season's going. If they're looking like they're going to be, topped in the standings and you're trying to win a Stanley Cup, it's foolish to trade him. But then if you don't win the Stanley Cup and you turn around and lose them for nothing in the offseason, well, maybe it looks like a bad decision. But you can't predict how things are going to go. You want to hope and be optimistic and hope for the best. But at the same time, it is complicated for sure. Now, the big complication, as Poulin explains, as we've talked about here before, is this is not just about what William Nylander should be getting for a contract. The way the Maple Leafs do things and the way their players view things there are a little bit different than other locations around the NHL. These guys, being Nylander, Marner, Matthews, are, I think, more concerned with what each other makes and what each other brings to the team than they are anybody else. They're not looking at any other contracts really as comparables. They're looking at each other and what they bring to the table. So Matthews just, of course, re-signed for well over $13 million, $13.5 million, right? We know Marner's due next year. And the small gap between Marner and Matthews now, then you have to think that he's probably going to be up around 13 as well. He'll be within $500,000 of Austin. You have to think that's where Matthews is going, and where Marner is going with his contract demands. And I think he's got a pretty good chance of getting it. But of course, Nylander signed well below both of them last time. And in the beginning, it didn't look like a great contract. A lot of people complained. But now it looks like a bargain, and he's going to be needing a significant raise. And with all the people talking about $10 million being too much for Nylander, the only reason I say it's too much, it's just because he's on the Leafs in that the contract, the way their cap is structured. That's it. Otherwise, I think he's on the current market. If he continues to be a 35 to 40 goal guy, 80 points, like he's been doing here, that's going to be the going rate. It's going to be right around there. Like, I honestly think it's not so much what he wants, it's because they just can't afford to give it to him. They still have a couple more years of John Tavares. Obviously, that complicates things as well. But, he, like I said, he's more concerned. He's not going to want to be $4 million or $3 million below Marner and Matthews. He's looking at everything saying, listen, I understand Matthews plays center. I don't. He scores a few more goals and all that, but look at the playoffs. He's probably more clutch than them guys so far. Regular season wise, yeah, sure, like they've put up some better numbers, but it's not that much better, really. Like, you know what I mean? Like, looking at everything all in all, you wouldn't think, based on stats alone, that there'd be a $3 or $4 million gap between all these guys. You can see Marner and Matthews making more money, not by that much. To be honest, I think William Nylander, based on them, could ask for more than that and be somewhat justified. I don't think the Leafs can do it. So I do seriously wonder if this will lead to a trade. If it doesn't, it's going to lead to other trades within the team because they're going to have to really trim down the supporting cast even more. By giving Nylander what his demands are, is probably going to prevent them from re-signing Tyler Bertuzzi and Max Domi. Right now, of course, the season's just starting. A lot of people think those are going to work out well and there'll be good fits there. Maybe it doesn't. And maybe they price themselves out of town. Hard to say. I can see Domi taking a bit of a hometown discount. Bertuzzi, I'm not so sure. But at the end of the day, it's complicated. But, it really boils down to what everybody else on that team is doing. Poulin is bang on with his analysis here, in my opinion. And unless Nylander is well below Marner and Matthews' production this year, I don't see a case where his demands are going to soften, and I do think ultimately it'll lead to a change in scenery or something else is going to have to give here as well. Long term, they also don't have goaltending figured out. Samsonovs is on a 1-year deal. Joe Wall still not making much money. If Wall is the goalie of the future, he's going to need a big raise. Like, they're going to have a lot of complicated things to do in the next couple of years, and it's going to prove very difficult with, 4 guys making $10, $11 plus million. So we'll see where that goes. In Ottawa, Shane Pinto is reportedly in Ottawa now, which is a good sign. Elliot Friedman tonight said that, to the best of his knowledge, no deal is imminent. I believe that, but I do think Ottawa's in Carolina tonight to start the season, that they don't play again until Saturday in their home opener, that the next 48 hours to me is going to be critical and what to see. If Norris isn't going LTIR, they need to make a trade. They can't go more than a couple games without Norris and Pinto both being in the lineup. The fact that Pinto's in Ottawa is very encouraging. Most players stay at home, do not come to their NHL city when they're not signed yet like that. That kind of tells us that things have to be close. And at this point, even if they had an agreement in principle, they can't execute that agreement because there's no cap space until we see a trade. I don't see Ottawa making a trade today or tonight because they have to play in Carolina. They're already a man short tonight because there's no cap space and Zach McEwen is injured. They can't replace him on the roster because there's no space to call anybody up. They can do that on Saturday because they can get an emergency recall if Norris is unable to go. But, at the end of the day here, I think things are close, and I think ideally you're going to see a trade from the Senators in the next 48 hours, create the room for Pinto, and hopefully he'll play on the weekend. At least that's the positive expectations right now. And another one to look at is LA. I've talked about how LA is very likely to look at goalie options. Of course, Connor Hellebuyck has been mentioned as somebody to be linked to all summer. He's re-signed now. We've heard some whispers about UC Saros. Barry Trotz has made it clear that he wants to re-sign Saros. He's not up for trade. Gotta wonder about John Gibson. I've seen him mentioned on some other trade bait boards and some other lists going into the year of players to watch that could be traded. We know he made a trade request. It never happened. We've also seen and heard that the Ducks probably wouldn't care to trade within their division because they're in very different places right now as their rivals, the Kings. So really, at the end of the day, if it's the best fit for Gibson and they can get a good return, and LA does have a lot of interesting younger players and stuff that they could consider parting with, I think you might have a great fit, and then Gibson doesn't have to go very far either. It could be a great fit for all parties involved. I'll be surprised if the tandem of Copley and Talbot get the job done, but I imagine they're going to try to see what they have for the first couple of months and see if they need to upgrade, because that's a great team to me. And if there's a weak link that could result in them not having the success that they should this year, it's between the pipes. But we'll see. Gibson could be a target for them if things don't work out. Let me know your thoughts on all today's news and rumors down in the comments. And, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.